What's up everyone, Dr. Jacob Wilson here, the Muscle PhD, and today's question is, how do I limit gaining fat on a bulk? You know what I mean? Like, Paul makes a really good analogy, like, hey, you want to go from like, you don't want to go from a 6-pack to a no pack, you want to at least have like a 2-pack, right, by the end of your bulk. So how do you actually do that? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of interesting, unique tips, okay? And the first tip I'm going to give you is time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting. Basically, studies show that when you're on a bulk, okay, and when you're in a calorie surplus, meaning you're eating foods that will make you gain fat, okay, that if you time-restrict your feeding, you won't gain as much fat than if you were to eat throughout the whole day. So take one guy who's going to be bulking and they're eating from 7 a.m. till midnight, okay, versus a guy who time restricts their feeding to where they're not eating, where they start eating at 1 and they stop eating at 10 at night. The second person who time restricted, meaning they start eating at 1 and stop eating at 10, would gain less fat than the guy who basically was eating all day long. Now, why is this the case, you ask? Well, what causes to gain fat? What causes to lose our pumps after long bulks? Well, the answer is that we're constantly feeding the muscles. Now, that might make them grow, but it shuts off the machinery that causes us to burn fat, and that's the mitochondria. If the mitochondria constantly has energy, it doesn't have to work as hard, okay? And it will actually decrease in number. And if that decreases in number, we become what we call insulin resistant. And when we're insulin resistant, we don't get as much pumps and we store fat more readily, okay? When you time restrict your feeding and you have a fasting period, that places a stress on the cell, a stress on the mitochondria, and they feel, oh, I'm gonna have to burn fat, I'm gonna have healthy mitochondria, and you'll be more insulin sensitive, okay? Which will improve your pumps during the gym because pumps are largely essentially dictated by insulin sensitivity, okay? So that's why time-restricted feeding works really well. Now remember though, if you're on a bulk, you can't necessarily fit all your meals in a 4-hour period because then you won't grow. You do need some meal frequency to grow. Now the second thing we were just having a conversation about was fasted cardio, okay? There was a study where they took guys and they put them on a 30% calorie essentially surplus, okay? Which sounds like a standard bulk. If you're gonna bulk, maybe you increase your calories by 30%. They increase your calories by 30%. Now one group trained in a fasted state and the other group trained not in a fasted state. They actually found that the guys who did the fasted cardio or trained in a fasted state put on less fat, even though they're a 30% calorie surplus, than the guys who trained in a not fasted state. Why? It goes back, guys, to the metabolic, essentially, adaptation that we're facing when we're in a stress situation. When we're training in a fasted state, we have more stress on the mitochondria, okay? If the mitochondria are more stressed, you're more insulin sensitive, you have more mitochondria, and your fat burning capacity is higher, and therefore we're leaner. And nutrient partitioning is better, meaning more of our nutrients go to our muscles than to our fat. That's the second point that I want to make, okay? One of the third points I want to have is that is to avoid dirty bulking and extreme bulking, okay? So we actually did a study, and I talked about this in another question and answer, where basically if you increase your calories by 500 to 750 a day, that's a surplus, as opposed to like 2,000 calories a day, okay? Though you might gain double the mass with the extreme bulk, after you've increased calories by 500 to 750, most of that storage is gonna be fat and not muscle. In other words, the guys that bulked at 2,000 more calories a day versus the 500 to 750 more, all the excess weight they gained was from fat, whereas both groups gained the same muscle. So again, think about it. Maybe you're gaining a ½ pound to 1 pound a week. That's going to limit fat gain. The next tip I have is linear versus cyclic bulking. If you're going to go on a 6-month bulk, even a 3-month bulk, by the time you're done with a month, your mitochondria is going to be like, well, you're giving me all sorts of energy. I'm going to decrease. I don't need to have as much mitochondria in my body. So again, I'm going to be insulin resistant, and I'm going to partition nutrients toward fat and away from muscle, and I will no longer get a pump and a vascular response from food as I did before. So basically, what do you need to do is calorie cycling even on your bulks. Maybe have 2 days straight where you're above maintenance, then 1 day at maintenance, then maybe 1 day below maintenance. that day below maintenance is going to stress the mitochondria. It's going to keep you insulin sensitive. Okay? So the final tip I'm going to give you is don't eliminate cardio altogether. At least do 1 to 2 high intensity cardio training sessions a week that'll also keep you insulin sensitive and partition nutrients toward the muscle and away from fat. So guys, let's summarize this all up. Number 1, time restricted feeding. That means that basically you want to essentially eat calories, eat your food, in probably an 8 to 10 hour feeding period, no more than 12. Okay, don't eat all day long. Number 2, throw in some fasted cardio in there or train in a fasted state. That also stress the mitochondria and keep you insulin sensitive, right? Also, I pointed out, don't dirty bulk all the time. Try and have more of a clean bulk where you're only increasing your calories 5 to 750. You're putting on half a pound to 1 pound a week. Next, calorie cycle. Okay, maybe two high days, 1 moderate day, and then a calorie restricted day. And then finally, don't eliminate cardio. Make sure you keep it in there, but make it high intensity in nature. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.